Today I'm going to show you how to add Spring Security. So if I go to the endpoint and I run this application, you can see that it tells me to enter the username and password. And if I click on login, after entering my username and password, you can see we're logged in, and you can see my username, you can see me right here, and also we have a profile page. We're going to be talking about this after now. But for now, let's see how we can implement user login, logout, and be able to type in our username and login. So this will be part 37. The complete parts of this application is right there in the description box. I'll recommend you follow it right from step 1 because this is very easy building this application. So let's go ahead to get started. If you are joining for the first time, you can subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss an update. Meanwhile, the application we are working with currently, let me just show you the application we are working with. It is this one, which actually we have not implemented login, logout. So this is part of the template. This picture here is part of the template, and also some things we've not done. So today, let's do the user login, logout. Now I made a beautiful step-by-step right here. So it's going to be 7 steps we are going to be following to be able to add user login, logout. So let's quickly start from the first one. The first one is that we are going to be adding all the necessary dependencies. Actually, we are going to be adding 2 dependencies. So at this point, I'm going to kind of restore this page, and I'm going to copy these 2 dependencies into the pom.xml file. So let's open the pom.xml file and fleet up, and let's go down to pom.xml. As I mentioned, if this has been informative for you, please leave a comment to let me know, and also like it and share around. And before I forget too, if you have any challenges whatsoever, feel free to let me know, because this is what I do. I help everyone to learn programming free. So please let me know when you have challenges. So I added 2 dependencies. The main dependency that actually is necessary is this one, Spring Security, Spring Boot Starter Security, but we have time-lived extras. Is used to be able to help us display the username on the HTML page. Just like this username I showed you, you have this username right here, this Jennifer Smith, but this is not me. So how do we display this username here in all the pages? That is why we need the second dependency. Alright, so step 2 says write the method for login, logout. So I'm going to open the application controller file. I'm going to go to src main Java and go to application controller file. I like to write the login, logout. So I'm going to just copy and paste this and use it to modify it to write to make it to be login, logout. So in this case, it's going to be login, and this in this case is going to be logout. And let me just call this login, and the second one is going to be logout. All right, so it means that if we go to this URL, we go to the login page. So let's check for the login page. The login page should be inside src main resources template, and we have a login page right here. The login page comes with the template, so you don't actually have to create the login page because it comes with the template. So I'm going to say login, and this one as well, we are going to change it to login as well. Okay, so I'm going to save and then move on to the next step. The next step says add some test records. Now we are going to go to MySQL and add a few test records to the user table. The user table is made up of 3 fields. 3 fields. So let me just show you. So I'm going to say use fleets app db, and I'm going to say describe. So if you want to know about the table, you can say describe user. The name of the table is user, so it's made up of ID, username, and password. So I can say insert into user values, and I want to insert the first record one. So let's have the first one, username, ID, username, and password. So how about insert into user username and password, and values is going to be username, let's say Hercules, and gifts, right? Okay, so we've inserted one row, Hercules and gift, and that will be fine. let me quickly insert another one. Let me insert saffron, and gift as well is the password. And let me insert another one, Leods Mila. Okay, that's a friend of mine. And okay, so I've inserted 3 records. So if I say select star from user, you can see that we have 3 records here: Hercules, Saffron, and Leod Mila. And I'm going to exit by pressing entering exit. Okay, so we've inserted some test records, and we're going to go to step 4, says set up the user model and repository. So the user model, for sure, you know, is a user class. So let's go to the models package and look for the user. The user model is this, all right? So this is the user model. As you can see, is exactly the same like the table, okay? Why we actually inserted records manually is because we've not talked about user registration. We are going to be talking about this a little later. And also, you may see something like JSON identity info. Please take it out because it makes the code unwieldy. So just remove this JSON identity info. Let's now go to the repository, the user repository. I'm going to look for the user repository right here. So this is it. So now the instruction says we are going to write a method in the user repository to find a username by username. So I'm going to simply say user. I'm going to write a custom query because the find by this method is I'm simply going to write the interface. So I'm going to say user find by username. So because username is one of the fields, and this is going to work. So I'm going to say string. You can also say find by whatever field you have in that class. So whatever field you have here. So if you have first name, you can say find by first name, find by last name, if this fields first name and last name is contained in this entity right here. So I'm going to say string username. The reason is because when the user enters this username, Spring Security is going to find that user by username and be able to authenticate this user. All right, so the next thing we are going to be doing now is to implement user details service. So the user details service provides us the user details service gives us additional functionalities. For instance, check the password, expire password, disable user, and a whole lot of things that can be managed, that can be used to manage user accounts. So we are going to implement the user details interface. To do that, we are going to be creating a class in the services package, I think. Yeah, in the services package. So go to the services package and let's create a new class. Now take note of how I create this class. So don't rush. So just say new class, and I'm going to name it my user details service. Okay. Now at this point you need to add an interface. So go to add interface because it's going to implement user details service, and search for user details service. This class is going to implement user details service. So that is what you are going to do. You are going to do it here so that it can give you the methods that are available in this interface. So I'm going to say finish. And at this point, you can see that it has an overriding method called load user by username. So let me just remove this comment. And at this point, let's write the body of this. So in this load user by username, we are going to take a user and then find this user by username. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to auto-wire the repository into this user details service. So I'm going to say auto-wired user repository, user repository. Okay, so all right, so I've auto-wired it, and the next thing I'm going to do is to create a new user. I'm going to create a new user repository. Let's see, why do we have this? Import this. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to create a new user here, and this user is going to be found from the repository using this username. So I'm going to call this method we wrote. So I'm going to say user is equal to user repository dot find by username. Okay, that's what we are going to do. So it gives us IntelliSense find by username and username. All right. Okay, so and this user is going to be the user we created in our model. So take note that there is a whole lot of things you can see here. So make sure you select the one you have in your model. So it's going to be it has to be in the models package. That's fine. Okay, so finally I'm going to check if this user exists. So I'm going to say if user is null. If user is null, I'm simply going to throw an exception. I'm going to throw an exception. Throw new username not found exception and say user not found. Okay, so that's when the user is not there, you throw this exception. And if the user is there, you simply return it, user principal. So you can actually return user like this, but we'll have a problem. So you can actually return this user. But in Spring Security, you need to return a principal. You need to return a principal. So we are going to use this user to build a principal. The question now you may ask is, what is a principal? Anyway, let's write the function first. New principal. We simply instantiate a new principal, a new user principal, and give it user. Okay, so we are going to instantiate a new user principal and give it this user. So instead of returning a bare bone user, we are going to return a user principal. Now, a user principal is a wrapper for user. So user principal provides us many other methods, as you can see, as you'll see after now. So we are going to now go to step 5. Let's now create this user principal, and let's see. So we are going to create the user principal, and it's going to implement the user details interface. Okay. So sometimes Spring Security can be a bit confusing, but with time you get used to it. So user details actually is what we are talking about as user principal. In Spring Security, we have user details, existing method, abstract method that has been created for us that we need to inherit or implement. So let's go to the instructions. Say in the models package, create a class user principal that implements user details. So let's go to models package and create a new class. New. Again, you need to be careful here. You need to. I'm going to call it user principal, and it's also going to implement. It's going to implement user details, not user details service, but user details. User details. That is this one. Okay. User details. Okay. Okay, perfect. So at this point, if I say finish, you'll see that this is going to give us a whole lot of methods that can be used to manage a user principal object. Okay. For instance, we have get password, get username, is account non-expired, is account non-locked out, blah, 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 blah. So I'm actually going to enable set to true. Is account enabled true, not expired true, because this is a demo. This is a demo we are working with. So let me just make sure we don't have any restriction. So the next instruction is we need to create a member variable of type user. Remember that this user principal is going to accept a user object and create a new user principal. So we are going to actually create a private member variable of type user. Okay. And at this point, we are going to, this is what we did, and generate a constructor as well. So I'm going to right click here. Let's generate a constructor. I'm going to go to source and say generate constructor using field. and this is fine, generate. You can see we have a constructor right here. I don't like this super here, so let me just take it out, please. All right, so the next thing we are going to do, we are going to modify the get username and get password for them to return, instead of to return null, we are going to return the user.get username and user.get password. So I'm going to say let's get password method here. Instead of to return null, I'm going to say user dot it's going to give me an IntelliSense.get password, and this one is going to be user.get username. And I think we're almost done. And also cite the methods in the class to return true. I already did it. We also have one piece of code we need to write. We need to write the security, the authorities. So basically the authority is the role. So, but we've not implemented role. So let's just use a default role, which is a user role. So I'm going to say return collections dot. Sometimes this can be funny. So I need it to give me IntelliSense. So I need connection.singleton, connection.singleton. I'm going to say new simple granted authority. So what this code is doing is that it's going to assign this user a role, the role of user. Okay, so basically the most basic user role in a Spring application. So I think this is what we have modified the get username and password. Okay, let's now go to the next part. So if we go to this my user details now, if we say user principal, now we can now import it, as you can see from here. Okay, so let me just quickly recap what we did. The first thing we did, we added the dependencies, we wrote the method for login, logout, we added some text record in the user table in the SQL database. Then we wrote a method in the repository that returns user by username, and then we implemented a user details service. That is a service that returns a user, but we also need to what we need to return is not a user but a principal, and so we needed to create a class that implements the user details interface. The user details gives us the principal, and that is where we are currently. So this is where we are at this point. Now we're going to extend the WebSecurityAdapter. So this is the main class that manages the security of your application. So I'm going to come to this class that manages the security of the application. Is going to be, I'm going to put it here in the base package, and I'm going to call this application, this class, I'm going to call it application security config. So a whole lot of things about security will be written in this class. So we are going to be writing just the basic one to be able to log in a user and log out. But later on, we are going to be writing a whole lot of things in this class to handle roles and other things. And so we are going to call this class application security config. Application security config, that's the name of the class, and make it to extend. And if you are trying to extend, you don't click on add is for interface. You click on browse. If you want to extend, click on browse. If you want to implement, you click on add, right? Take note of that. And we want to extend web security configure adapter, which is this one. That is what we want to implement, and I'm going to say finish. So we have a class now that implements web security configure adapter. The first thing we want to do is to override the configure methods, the configure method that takes a HTTP security object. So let me just first let me override this method. So to override, you simply come down to override implement methods, and we are going to choose configure HTTP security and say OK. All right, so I'm going to remove this. So we are going to write the methods, the code inside here to handle a HTTP security, about user login, logout, the pages to be allowed and stuff like that have to be written in this method. So so the next thing we want to do, we are going to come back to this method to write it. But the next thing we want to do is to create a password encoder bean method. So because normally you don't return your password like a plain text, so we need a bean to handle encoding our password. So I'm going to say a bean, and I'm going to say public. I'm going to create the bean method. I'm going to call it password encoder. Password encoder. Okay, so and I'm going to return no op password encoder. So for now we don't encrypt it with anything. No op passwords encoder and encoder dot get instance. That is what we are going to return. All right. So this is the bean. It returns simply a password encoder. Okay. A no op password encoder. So later we're going to be talking about using bcrypt password encoder. That will be later on. All right, so we are going to then auto-wire the user details service because we are going to be using the getting the user details, the username and password, the person that is coming from the login form is going to be captured here and evaluated whether it's correct before we can log in the user. Actually, logging in user and logging out is handled here, right here in this file. So to be able to get this user, I'm going to auto-wire the user details service. Auto-wired private user details service. Okay, so let's see. I think everything should be fine. So we are not done yet. We need to also write the authentication provider bean method. So system kind of is freezing up at auto-wired. That is fine. So let me save everything. User details service, Control Shift O on my keyboard, and that is fine. The next thing we are going to do, maybe I'm going to just collapse this import statement so that I have some room. We are going to create a bean that returns DAO authentication provider. DAO means data access object. So that is some kind of name that Spring's call just a provider that provides authentication. Authentication simply means access. So it's going to be a bean, and then I'm going to write public authentication provider. Authentication provider. Okay, so I'm going to create a new DAO authentication provider. So I'm going to say DAO authentication provider. Let me call it provider is equal to new DAO authentication provider. All right. So now we have created a provider. A provider needs user details, right? So I'm going to give it the user details service that we have here as we auto-wired here. So I'm going to say, let me just make room here, provider dot set user details service, set user details service, okay, that is fine. And then I'm going to set also the provider to use this password encoder that we have here. So I'm going to say provider dot set password encoder. A provider also needs you need to set the password encoder as well, and it's going to be this password encoder that we have here. So I'm going to simply call it, because we have it as I think this is called constructor overloading or constructor injection. So I'm just calling the constructor here, right here, and I'm going to simply return the provider. So basically, the user details service gets the user details from the login page, and then is going to just return it. But there's work for us to do. We need to tell the configure method where the login page is coming from, because the username and password is coming from the login page. And I'm going to actually paste the content of this this configure method. I'm going to paste it because it's much. I don't want to really type it out. I'm going to explain the most important part for you after we are going to be talking about other ones. So we have this form login. The form login shows we are using form login and not other login methods. And the login page is /login. Remember, we wrote a method for /login and it's going to return the login page. It permits the login page without authentication. So you don't need to authenticate for you to go to the login page. And logout page, when you log out, it invalidates the session, clear the authentication, and then go to logout. Okay, so this is what we do. Now this method, this here is telling you that the resources which contain the styles or the scripts to style the login page, we also don't need to authenticate to access those resources. And that's why we have these ant matches here, the image, the fonts, the CSS. So we don't need to authenticate, because if you don't add all of this, then the styling for the login page will be missing, and that will not make any sense. All right. Okay, so let's see where we are. Okay, so I think we are done. So I'm going to kind of save everything, and I'm going to let me go back to the page first. So this is our page. This is a page we are working with. Remember, it's free, or we can access this page easily. But if I run this application again, and I'm going to try to access this page again, and we see we will not be able to log in, access this page, unless we be able to log in using a username and password. And maybe we can also just take a look at the login page, and let me just show you that the text box for the username and password should be named username and password. So right here you have the login form control, form/form, and we have the input here, type password, placeholder password. But now it will not work, because we need to set the username to the name of the username text box to username, and the name of the password text box to password. And we're also going to set the form action. So if I go to refresh this page at this point, let me just refresh. You can see it tells us please sign in, and it really does not work. So it doesn't work. So let's go back. Okay, so we missed out something. So in this application security config, we're actually going to add two things. We are going to add enable web security, enable web security, and enable web security, and also we are going to add configuration. Okay, so that is the two things we are going to add. Save and Control-Shift-O on my keyboard, and we are going to go to the login page, and we are going to set the action of this form. So we are going to set the action of this form. Since we are working with time leave, it's going to be th action, since we are working with time leave, and the th action is going to be going to login. So it's going to go to @login /login right here. Okay, and the method is going to be post. I already explained this in the previous tutorials when we created submission forms for submitting data. So the method is going to be post, and the name, the input username. Let's see. Okay, so type is equal to password. Okay, so we need to set the name of the username text box. We need to set it to username. So that is not optional. You cannot change this name. It has to be username. and the name of the password text field is password. Name is equal to password. Okay, perfect. So in this way, it's going to match whatever we have, fields we have in the database. At this point, I'm going to run this application, and let's see that if we log in successfully, we'll be able to go to the home page. So I'm going to relaunch this application at this point, and let's see what we have. So basically, when this application launches, it's going to show us the real, it's going to show us not the default login page, but the real login page that we have in the application. And it's going to be HTTP localhost running at port 8080. So at this point, I expect to see a beautiful login page. Let's see. So it says being in memory. Okay, let's see. We have an error here. So let's see. Okay, the user details service we created, we need to annotate it with the @service annotation. So there is a mistake. Let's go back to the services folder, and we are going to open my user details service. So this is actually going to be annotated with the @service annotation. @service annotation. Okay, so in that way it can be auto-wired in the security config file. So I'm going to rerun this application again. Run. So remember that we created a number of users in the MySQL. So we could use these users we created to log in. Hopefully now we are not going to be having errors. Tomcat started at port 8080. I'm going to refresh this page, and now you can see that we have a beautiful login page. The kind on the genius is not correct. So I have a user I created, Lyudmila, and the password is gift, G-I-F-T, and I'm going to log in. Now you can see that we logged in successfully, and it's asking us to save the password. So if I go to try to log out, it's not going to work, except I go back to login. If I go to /login, and I can use another user I created, let's say Saffron, because I created all it in the database, and I can also log in because I have that user in my database. So this is how to log in and log out. So we've not talked much about logout, but I'm going to be talking about it a little later. So I'm going to be stopping here. I recommend you subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you have challenges following this class, and I'll always be there for you. If this has been informative for you, please like this video, share it, and also let me know if you have any issues. I remain Kind the Tech Pro, and I'm always there for you. The next class is going to be part 38, and we are going to be cleaning up this username here. We are going to be using our own username. We're also going to be talking about this thumbnail here, how to add our own thumbnail moving forward. So we'll see you in the next class.